Hello everyone and welcome back to Insights at DDLynn Designs, a unique twist in the ancient art of wire. This is DDLynn, and per request, I believe it was Juliet that reached out. She found some old earrings I did a couple years ago and asked if I would recreate them. So I did a survey and it seemed I got some really good positive response. I think these are very beginner friendly because we're not doing a lot of twisting and things of that nature other than making our spirals. So being on a spiral kick this week, I thought I'd continue with the theme. So before we get started, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe and join my channel. Hit the bell so you know when my tutorials are coming out next. And your feedback and comments are really appreciated. So we're going to be making these earrings. I used a cushion kind of square stone on these because the hole is directly in the bottom. On these, my hole is, I guess the best way to describe it is going through the tip of one of the bends, or more of like a diamond shape. This is actually my preference, but not all my beads are made this way. I got these stones 4 years ago when I first started in the beautiful ancient art of wire. So the materials that we're going to be using are 2 pieces of 20 gauge wire 6 inches long. Now you'll be using those 6 inches for your stones, okay? It's important before you cut your wire that you get scrap wire and make sure that the hole will accommodate the gauge of your wire. If not, you're gonna have to come down a gauge or a smaller gauge. So if 20 won't fit, try 21. And you need to use round because square will be wider than 20 round. So 20 square will be wider than 20 round, and it may get caught up in the hole. So I've already started one of my spirals, and this is a little tight on this one, but it is slipping through. So I'm just gonna push that up. I'm not gonna do 2 earrings because they are identical. I'm just gonna start with 2 of the stones so you see you see what's important on how you're going to flip your spiral so that they're in opposite or opposing directions. So I'm going to take my wire out, and I've already done a tutorial on spirals. So I'm basically going to make a very small, tiny hoop, and you need very petite round nose pliers. So I'm going to make a very small loop. And then I'm going to leave that loop open a little bit. Let me stop there, like I did on this one. So there's just a little tiny hole. Sometimes I close it off completely. So let me go back. Okay, so now I've got my little hole, and then I'm going to get my flat nose pliers, and I'm just going to squeeze it down a little bit, and then I'm just going to start my roll, and then I'm going to match it up. So if you're first starting out, you want to make sure that you match up both of your spirals so that they're equal in size, and that way you have symmetry. So I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to take a look at my other one. And it looks like I need to go just a little bit more. So I'm going to match that up. That looks pretty good. And that hole's a little bit bigger, but that's okay. It's not going to hurt anything. So I'm just going to go one little tiny more turn. So you always want to do both sides before you finish one piece, and it'll keep symmetry for you. So, and I'll probably redo this because I'm so picky. I don't like the differences in sides in the hole, but the importance is learning this technique. So you notice how this wire, this particular spiral, is spiraling in, right? So we want that one to do the same thing. So they're actually in opposite directions. And this will keep you from getting confused, because if you do your first one, you might get a little confused as where to bend your wire. So I'm going to take this out, and I'm going to bend it straight up. I need to get my needle nose. And I'm just going to bend this wire straight up. Like that. Then I know that I want it to go in the opposing direction. Even though they're facing each other, they're actually in opposite directions. Because if you had it this way, it would be in the same direction. So they really are in opposing directions. So now I'm not going to do this one because it's the same thing that you're going to learn from one. So I'm just simply going, now you have the option, and let me show you. You have the option of bending it way up on the stone or keeping it closer to the stone, meaning at the base of the stone. Because this is a diamond shape, so to speak, I'm going to keep it closer to my stone. I just kind of want it resting down here on the bottom. So I'm not going to have much gap. I'm just going to have a little bit. And I'm simply going to bend this at the neck straight up. And then I'm going to push it over my stone. And it got exactly where I wanted it to be. So now we're going to shape the top and create our loop like we did on this one. And let me see if I expand my screen. Okay, I'm going to really have to watch that I stay in frame here when I made that screen wider. So now I'm going to bend my neck towards me. And then I'm going to get my 6-step bail making pliers, and I'm going to use the number 2, which is this one here. So that's 1, 2. And I'm just going to roll that wire towards me. And my stone hole is a little off center, and that's okay. I'm going to correct that or compensate for it. And then I'm just going to bend my wire over, and then I'm going to swing that wire up and over and around. And then to line up your loop so that it's center on the stone, I'm just going to rock it. And then I'm going to pull it like that. Then I'm going to get my pliers, and I'm turning my wire in the best working position for myself so that I can hold it and start swinging my wire around, which is way out here. So I'm going to get my pliers, and let me shrink my screen down just a little bit so you can see where I'm at. So my wire is way out here, and I'm going to bring that wire around. I'm going to start wrapping it around my neck. Now here's a little tip. As you're wrapping and pulling your wire is going to have a tendency to want to curl in. So just straighten it out and then come around again. And I'm swinging it around the back. Now we're going to start to make this kind of cap, if you will. And let me blow this up again. On top of the stone. We're making like a little cap. You don't have to. You can crimp off right there. There's many ways that you can do this. You can actually create another spiral on top of the stone by spiraling in the wire up here in the opposite direction and bringing it around, and I've done that. I've made a 2 spiral piece. So maybe, should we do that? Make a smaller little spiral instead of keep capping the neck so that you can see. On this one, so let me explain to you, I think I will. On this one, I wrapped it around the neck and made that little cap, and then I just brought it around the back and made a little swirl. I think I am going to do another spiral so that you can see the different ways that you can wrap beads. So here's my wire way out here, and this is an important tip. You really want your wire way away from you. You want it on an angle away from the direction that you're going to go, because we're going to be rolling in. It's going to make it a lot easier for you. So now I'm going to do the same thing as I did before, and I'm going to roll that tip into a tiny, tiny loop. I gotta watch here when my camera's expanded like this to stay down. I really need to lift this up a little bit. Let me see if I can do that. I can't. Okay, so we'll just continue. And then I'm just gonna do like before, and I'm gonna spiral this in. Now you wanna stay very close to your wire so that you don't pull, sorry you guys, let me get out of that expanded. You want to stay very close to your wire when you're spiraling in so that you don't pull it off the top or out of shape. You're going to like this. It's really, really pretty, the double spiral. Arizona weather just dries my throat out like no tomorrow. Now, you want to lift up as you're coming near the stone. So see how I'm lifting up on the wire so that you can get it over your stone. So just lift it up a little bit so you have some gap space and just keep rolling it in. And it's going to be so, 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 so cute. I need to get a thinner tipped plier because that's too thick. Now you want to hold your neck and just roll it in until you find center. And you're going to love this. Isn't that pretty? Now you would do the same thing on the other side before you begin to complete your earrings. So now we're going to make our hoops. So I'm going to put this aside and just see the difference. And we're going to make these hoops here. So now you want to cut yourself two pieces of 18 gauge wire, 3 inches long, and 2 pieces of 20 gauge wire, 3 inches long. And you can decide on how big you want your loop. I'm going to use my little, it's a little plastic mandrel. And I'm going to mark my wire. So I'm always going to be super patient for beginners. That way I try to keep center as much as possible. So I've got exactly 3 inches. So I'm going to mark at the 1.5 inch mark. And I'm going to do the same thing with my 20 gauge. Now, if your wire is bent up at all, and I love this, and you're new to my channel, I'm going to show you a really cool technique on how to straighten and harden that wire up even more. And you can get a bench block, or you can get a big spool of wire. I'm going to be using my bench block, and I'm just going to take my wire, and you see how it's kind of curving off, and I'm just going to go up and down that wire to straighten it out. I saw a gal do this, I don't know who she was, 4.5 years ago when I got into the business. Well, it hasn't been 4.5 years, it's been 4 years in April. And I'm just gonna do that again. It's gonna really straighten your wire beautifully, and it's gonna harden it. So we have 2 perfectly straight pieces of wire, and I'm gonna go ahead and do that to my 18 gauge. Even though they're pretty straight. And someone asked me to please put the materials in my description, so I'm going to try to get in the habit to do that. So I have my 2 wires, and I think I want my loop. I'm just going to call this the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the number 6, okay? So I'm going to center where my mark is on here. And that's my center, and I'm just going to push both these wires over, and I'm going to cross them over so that they're identical. Now I'm going to come down a couple sizes so that I can fit my 20 gauge in between. Let me show you. In between, so my 20 gauge round, is going to go in between the 18 gauge, and we don't want it the same size because I don't want it super flush to the bottom. I want that opening. You can have it any way you want, but that's how I'm doing it. So now, instead of doing, I think I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I'm going to come up to 3 or 4, number 4. I'm just numbering them from one, starting from the top. That's how I do it. I'm just going to make sure I've got my center, and I'm just pushing those wires around. Now, here's a really cool tip. If you find that one side is longer than the other, see how this one is longer? Do you see that? Then push the longer wire over first until it lines up with the other one. See how we're lining them up now? That's a really cool tip when you're first starting out because it happens a lot. So now I'm going to pull those out, and these should fit in there beautifully. So now I'm just going to do the one. You want to do both at the same time, okay? So now I'm just going to do the one, and I'm going to get my hammering block, and I'm going to hammer the arc of this loop. I'm going to hammer the arc of it, and I'm just going to hold down at the neck, and I'm just going to start hammering and fanning out the bottom of that loop. So here's what you have, and you want to do both at the same time. Each time you do one, you want to do the other matching hoop so that you make sure that as you fan your wire out, they're being fanned out the same. So I'm just going to do that one. Maybe I'll do the other one. Why not? I'm just afraid my camera's going to die, you guys. I haven't gotten my new phone, and I started doing this tutorial yesterday, and it died 10 minutes into it. And I still had battery, so I have no idea what's going on, but it's certainly time for me to get a new phone. So you see how we're trying to match these up? So I'm going to do this one just a little bit more, and I'm going to open up that neck. Let me get all of this paraphernalia out of the way. So that looks pretty good to me. Now I'm just going to open the neck up so I can make sure that they're even, and they look pretty even. This one I'm going to do a little bit more over here. Let's see. It just gives it some nice look, a nice design look. Okay, that looks pretty good to me. Let me get that distraction out of the way. So now we're going to do the same thing to our 20 gauge. This time I'm just going to open these up a little bit. And I want to make sure that they're going to fit in there nicely, and they are. And we'll be cutting some of the length off of that. Hold very firmly. And I'm kind of doing like the letter C. If you notice, I'm shifting my wire back and forth, trying to keep everything the same, meaning as I'm using the same pressure, so I'm trying to keep it even all the way around. Let's open that up. I'm going to hold down very firmly. I want to make sure I didn't lose my shape there, and I did a little bit. When I opened it up, I lost some of my shape there. Just kind of want to squeeze that in a little bit right there. Just kind of massaging it down. I caught that my shape got a little off. So let's match those up. And that looks pretty good to me. Oops, I got that one on the back side. No wonder it was confusing me. So now what I'm going to do, and I repeat myself a lot in every tutorial because I never know who's new to my channel, so I don't want to make any assumptions that you've seen me do this before. And I'm just going to buff my wire so it's nice and shiny and get out any minor hammer marks. And I use a buffing block, and these are professional grade. Construction buyers use them, and it is a 180 grit. And they last 100 times longer. I don't know if it's really 100, but they last much longer than a fingernail file buffing block. Those don't last very well at all. These just have a thicker sandpaper on them, so they hold up a lot longer, and you have 4 sides. So now what we're going to do is we're going to trim our edges. I want to see where I want this to sit in there. And I like that. So we're going to make sure that they're even. Let's get all this paraphernalia out of the way. Where is my cutters? My favorite ones. Just want to make sure that they're even up here. So all I'm going to do is just trim them evenly. And then this one too. Just keeping them close together and trimming them evenly. And then I'm just going to line them up and make sure that they are the same length. Let's go over here. So this one over here, oh, you can't see this. Let me go up. So I'm on a line. So I'm on a line down here. And this one over here is a little bit longer. This one stays right at the line. So cutting mats are really helpful to make sure that you're within the same measurements when you're trimming your wires. So now they're exactly the same in height. So I'm not going to cut those yet because I'm going to make my loops. Now you have two options. You can loop these out sideways like I did on my first ones 3 years ago, or you can loop them in. I'm going to loop them in like I did on here. So I'm just going to loop them in, and I'm not going to do both because I'm really afraid my camera is going to poop out on me. So I need my 6-step bell making pliers, and I'm just going to roll them in, and I'm going to use my number 1. And I'm just rolling that wire in to itself. And I'm going to do the same thing over here using my number 1. And I'm rolling that wire into itself. And don't worry if they spread apart. We're going to pull them back together. So now I'm going to square them up. You see, can you see? I don't know if you can see that, how this one over here is turning. It's kind of turning this way in. And how you deal with that is you just simply straighten up that wire. And that's much, much better. And then I'm just going to close that one off. So that's a whole lot better. So now I'm going to do this one. No, I'm not going to do that one. I don't want to do two at the same time. And it looks like I rolled on the back side, meaning I meant to roll in the other direction. So I'm on the back side of it. So instead of unrolling my wire, I'm going to buff out the hammer marks because this is the side I hammered on. And it's good that this happens, that you can see what I do to go, okay, I'm not going to unroll those and roll them in the opposite direction again. I'm just going to buff out this wire. Okay, so now I'm going to roll this one, and I need to line it up to see where I need to cut it. So I'm going to bring these wires together, and I don't want it sitting on the bottom, but you can. By the way, you can have it sitting on the bottom. So I'm going to cut my wires I'm going to start with 1/4 of an inch, and I'm just going to eye it. You can measure. Now I know I need to roll back. So by the time I roll back, it's going to bring this wire up more. So I'm thinking those wires are still a little bit too long because I'm going to lose about 1/8 of an inch in length once I roll back. And I can always shorten my loops. So I'm going to do a little bit more. Okay, I think that looks good. Now, so when I want to make the matching one, I'm going to go ahead and trim this one back now. And this is what I mean by trying not to make one piece. You'll forget how far you cut back on the other. If you complete just one entire earring, you may not remember how far back you cut, or if you didn't, mark your wire. So I'm actually lining this up so this one is ready for me when I decide to wrap the other earring. So I don't have to get confused there, okay? So that's another good tip. So now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to roll back. And I'm using my number 1. If I can hold on to this wire. My throat is shot. I'm going to need some water. And I'm just rolling into the body of the wire. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Okay, so now I'm just going to take a look at that. And that's perfect. I wanted it up higher. And I'm going to bring these wires in. So I'm squeezing at the top, not the bottom. And I'm going to bring these in a little bit. And then I'm going to line this up in the middle. So we're going to have something like that. Isn't that cute? You could decorate this in so many ways, everyone. It's amazing how much you can decorate this. So I just saw something here. So I'm going to straighten up these two loops here. And how I'm going to do that, because I want them to fit in the center a little bit better, is I'm going to come on the loop and I'm going to hold right at the neck with my fingernail. And I'm just going to bend it out a little bit. And then I'm going to come on the loop and I'm going to hold right here at the neck with my fingernail very, very firmly, and I'm going to bend it out a little bit. Now I have more of this horseshoe, if you will, effect, and this should be coming in there closer as I bring my wires together, and it is. So now I'm going to do the same thing on these. I'm going to grab the loop, and right at the neck, I'm going to bend it out a little bit, just kind of straightening that up. You see the effect that it creates? And it just brings them closer together. Now, you have two options. You can weave in between here if you want, or you can just use your half round wire. You're going to be cutting. I'm not going to weave in between today. I just don't see the need for it because I'm going to be using a jump ring to hold these together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring these closer together, and I'm simply going to start rocking them back and forth as I'm squeezing them in. See how much closer together I got them? And I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to start rocking them back and forth. So I'm pushing down and I'm pushing up with my thumb and my index finger and bringing them in. And it's amazing how quickly that ties them in. So now if you want to hold it together better so this isn't slipping up and down, I love to use twisted jump rings, and I want to let you know what millimeter size I cut here. I used my 6-step bell making pliers, and I believe I used the number 3. So I used the number 3 to make my twisted jump rings, and I used a 28 gauge square because you're going to need at least that size to get it through these holes here, okay, these loops. So I'm just going to cut that. Now, before we close anything off, and I just realized I almost forgot this, we're going to slide this loop, our stone, over the horseshoe. Almost forgot that. Normally I do that in advance, but it's okay if we didn't. All we're going to do is just open up this loop, and then we're going to bring our piece in. Need to open it a little bit more. This way it's permanently connected, and you want to make sure it's on the front, and it isn't. So I'm just going to swing that back around and go in the opposite direction. So now we have our earring stone, our stone hanging from the base of our loop. Now I'm going to go ahead and close this off. Make sure they're lined up. Then I'm going to cut my jump ring. I'm going to come on this side. And then I'm going to put my jump ring through those 4 loops. Just getting that little bugger in there. Now at this point, you could leave it exactly like that, but I liked wrapping the half round wire here. Just kind of holds the shape versus this moving around, or let's say you didn't have it perfectly centered. You can correct all of that by adding wire, and I want to use a different plier. Now, the beautiful thing about twisted wire jump rings is that, number one, they're much stronger than just doing a 20 gauge round jump ring. And I didn't want a big girthy 18 gauge in here. You could, and it would be no problem at all, but this is just what I wanted to do. Secondly, once you oxidize and tumble, I tumble all my jewelry in a professional jewelry tumbler. I do not use those old rubber rock tumblers. If you're ever interested in the tumbler I use, let me know. Anyways, you could absolutely leave it like this and your earring is done. But I like decorating more, so I'm going to go ahead and be adding half round wire. And you notice that these hoops here are bigger than this one. It just depends on the size that you want to make. You can use a much smaller stone or just a standard round bead below and just have a little round bead dropping. It doesn't have to be a bigger stone. These are chrysocolla, by the way. They just got a lot of malachite in them. So anyways, chrysocolla has a lot of different minerals in it. So now I'm going to go ahead and get myself some half round wire, and I've already cut myself a piece. And you only need a couple of inches, but I'm going to be using a 20 gauge half round. You can use 22 gauge. I want a little bit more of a thicker half round on there. Now this might be a little tricky for you because you have to keep the center when you're wrapping it. And what I mean is your inner loop needs to remain center so you have symmetry on the same time. If you wrap too tight to one side, your piece is going to be cocked off. So it's going to be cocky. So you're not going to wrap super tight when you're first starting. So I'm going to make just a little hook. And I'm going to come down here. Bird just flew into my window. And I'm going to wrap that over, but I'm going to do it loosely. And I can't find my other piece of half round, so I'm going to have to cut another piece. Just going to feed it through, and I'm going to leave it wrapped loosely. I'm using the wrong pliers. Those are way too wide and girthy. Okay, so I'm just going to leave it like that. These are just really good tips for you to keep everything symmetrical. And I need to get my wire. I'll be right back. So I got myself another piece of 20 gauge half round wire. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. And this is really going to help you keep your symmetry when you're wrapping this loose loop that keeps wanting to move back and forth. I know everything looks a little sloppy. Don't worry about that. That's nothing. Just going to pull that through. And then I'm going to line them up. You just need to decide on where you want your wire before you tighten it down. And so I'm centering these up. And I think I want mine down a little bit this time, so I'm just going to cinch just one off. I'm just kind of, what I did, and there's many different ways to do it, I change up all the time depending on what I'm doing, is I'm not cinching super tight because I want to cinch the other side and make sure that these are even. If I have to loosen this side up, I still can because I don't have a bunch of wraps on it. So I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to lift this up and I'm going to cinch down and make sure that my inner loop, see how it's off cock there? So this is what I mean. So I'm going to slide that up and I'm going to loosen this one up. I'm just going to bring it down, so that should bring that more to center. So now I've got center. Today I'm having difficulty doing this. One, I have way too much wire. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at that. Make sure that it's center. So what I'm doing is I'm just pushing it over a little bit, looking at it. So let's go ahead and cinch this one down up here so that we're matching up. That looks pretty good. So I'm just going to rock this wire over. Normally I don't have this much difficulty, but I am this morning for some reason. So I'm just going to feed my shorter wire through because I have more control over the wire when it's shorter, when you're working with half round. Now you can make as many wraps as you want. Just depends on your taste. Now I can see that I need to move it over to the right a little bit. I'm simply going to do that by squeezing it, my two wires together. And I'm going to cinch that down a little bit more. You don't have to use half round. You can actually weave the sides or not. This wire is too long. I am going to trim it. So that looks pretty good to me. I'm going to slide this one up a little bit. And now I'm going to tighten this one up. And I'm just rocking that wire back and forth. It's still moving around a lot. I'm going to straighten this wire out. And I'm going to feed it. I'm just going to do a different one this time. I'm going to feed it through inside those two hoops. And I kind of bent my half round a little bit, so it's giving me a little bit of a hard time. And I still need to have this over this way a little bit more. So I'm using my thumb, keeping it there as I bring this wire. I need to bring this wire under. So I need to loop this through here. And bring it around. Let's see what we got going. That's much, much better. I'm going to slide this down because I want them parallel to each other. Now it's holding good and steady. Half round wire can be a bugger to work with when you first start out. As I mentioned, I normally don't have this hard of a time, but you know, it changes on us constantly. So I'm going to go ahead, because I just wanted to change up the design a little bit, and I'm going to feed that through one more time. That's my dog, Sophie. She's my little love of my life. Okay, I like that. I like that extra wrap down there. And I'm going to feed this one through. Rock it over. Slide it up. Now I felt right then and there that I slid that up too high. I actually could feel that. So I'm going to push it down with my thumb. And I'm lining up these half round wires in the back because I don't want to ding the wire in the front. And I like those two wraps. Now on the back, I need to trim these. So here's a little tip. You want to lift up on it, okay? So that you can get up underneath it. And then you want to trim. And you don't want that wire coming flush to the outside wire or it's going to lift up. You want to come in. You only want a little tiny bit of wire in the back. That you're going to cinch down. So it's literally sitting just on the one wire and in between the two. And I'm going to lift up on this one. And I'm going to rock it a little bit so it's nice and tight. And I'm going to come inside really close, almost as if it seems like I'm cutting it right at the inside of this loop, but it seems like I'm doing that just to leave me enough length to cinch it down. Now I'm deciding if I want to do one more wrap, and I think I do. I really like that change up there. So I'm going to feed this wire through one more time, and it's getting really hard because I've been working it. And I'm rocking it in. I'm going to turn it over, slide it up. Yeah, I like the 3 wraps there. What a pretty earring. And then we'll make our hook, and I want to show you how to make a spiral ear hook. I'm going to feed that through. I think I will have just enough wire to feed it through and around. Yep, perfect. Isn't that the cutest? I'm going to get my flat nose and I'm just going to flatten out. And they're in there snug as a bug and as a rug. I'm telling you. I'm going to bring this around. Now this one I'm going to cut flush to the inside of this wire, the outside loop, because I don't want it showing in between this gap space in between these 2 loops. So I'm going to come very close to the edge where there's just barely a tiny, tiny little piece of wire sticking up. And I'm going to use my pliers to roll it in. So I'm coming off the tip of that half round wire and I'm rolling into the core wire, this outside loop. And then I'm going to come on the outside and roll it in even more. And it's amazing how much it will stretch that wire right on the top of this base wire here. Just stretched it right over it, but you can't see it coming through the other side. So I'm going to roll that around. And I'm going to make sure that's nice and snug. So I'm just going to rock it a little bit. And I'm going to bring my pliers up underneath that wire again, right flush to the outside wire. So this wire here, you see that? It's just barely there. And then I'm going to roll it right off that tip. Then I'm come on the inside and roll it in. That is so cute. Isn't that cute, you guys? What a pretty little earring. You could do this in so many different ways. You could weave, you could do a zigzag weave all the way through here. The design is a concept and you can take off from it from there. You could add beads all the way through this hoop. That would be so pretty. Let me show you if I could just give you an idea. I just see things as I go because I don't draw. But let me see if I can just drop some beads down in there so you can see what I'm talking about. I can't really move my hand much down here. But do you see what I mean? Completely changing up the design. So you could use the same concept over and over again, but make it bigger, make it smaller, add beads, add gemstones, weave in beads, whatever you want to do. You just keep going with that concept and elaborating off of it. And it's amazing where you can go. It's a magical ancient art. I just love it. And I give tribute and honor and credit to all those that have gone before me, especially 5,000 years predating the Phoenicians. I posted on my DDLynn Designs Facebook page the history of the ancient art of wire recently, and it's a wonderful article all about it, what they did, how they did it, and honoring wire artists today on the dedications and thousands of hours it takes to really begin to master this very ancient art. So very quickly, you're going to cut. I have them right here. I use 20 gauge wire for my ear hooks. So I'm going to show you how to make this adorable spiral earring hook to go in the same, design here with our earring. So we're kind of staying in the same. So I'm just simply going to take, and I'm just going to make a tiny, tiny little loop again. And I need my tweezer nose. And we are done. Just remember, if you're a beginner, and I know I repeat myself a lot, to do a little bit on each earring at the same time, and this will really help you with symmetry. So I'm going to make a very tiny loop, and I'm going to close this one off. So I am really cranking on that loop, and these are excellent pliers for that. And to close it off, here's a tip. you want to trim that inside end wire like that. Then you're going to come right at the tip where that wire ends. And you're going to turn it in even more. Then you're going to get your pliers, and you need good flat nose pliers to do this, not tiny tip nosed or petite nose pliers, because you need to be able to control the wire. That's a very tiny piece of wire, and I'm just squeezing that in. Do you see how I squeezed it in and closed off that loop? So now I'm just going to make a spiral, and you don't need a very big spiral, because remember, this is going on the earring. Although I have to tell you, I had a gal that wanted me to make her huge spiral earring hooks, and they were gorgeous. They covered her entire earlobe. She has larger earlobes like I do, and she absolutely loved them. So I've made her several. She'll sometimes just call me and say, Dee, I need some sterling silver ear hooks, and I want the really, really big spirals. So I'm going to make one. I'm going to compare it to what I have here. A little bit bigger. And I cut myself 2 1/4 inches of 20 gauge round wire. And then I'm going to do the same thing as if I made this spiral down here. I'm just going to get my needle nose, wherever they are, and I'm going to straighten that wire up. Straight up. So we have this. Then I'm going to turn the wire over, and if you're making 2, you want to do them at the same time, because of course you're making 2. You need 2 ear hooks, unless you have 1 ear. But anyways, you want to make sure that they're in the opposite directions when you roll this wire over. So I'm going to make a very tiny loop, and I've got this very tiny petite nosed plier, and I'm simply just going to, and I'm coming very close, but I'm staying kind of right on the neck, and I'm just going to push that wire over and around, because this is where it's going to hang off of my jump ring. So it's going to hang right off there. Isn't that cute? Super cute. Now you're going to get your 6-step bell making pliers, and you can use any size you want. I tend to make a bigger ear loop. I don't know, it's just a style of mine, but I'm going to go down today, and I'm going to use the number 4. Now I'm going to line up my spiral with the loop facing on top or away from me. And I'm simply going to bend that wire all the way around the back. Sorry, you guys, I got out of frame there. And I'm going to bend it right in, just like that. Then I'm going to kick my wire out. So I'm going to just take about 1 millimeter or 2, and I'm just going to bend it out like that. It's kind of like a traditional ear hook. Then I'm going to open it up a little bit. I hammer every ear hook. That way it doesn't lose its shape or go out of shape. So I'm simply going to put the loop, and I'm going to move down so that my spiral is on the lip so I don't hit my spiral. And I'm just going to gently tap this and flatten it out a couple of times. And then I'm going to do the same thing, and I need to cut that kick down a little bit. I'm going to do it on an angle. Much better. See, I kind of did an angle on that. And then I'm just going to very gently hammer that out a little bit so we have a nice point on it. Now, in the tumbler, it smooths everything out. It's amazing. And so I never have to come in and file this down. I want to line up my loop, my spiral loop on my ear hook. I noticed that it was a little off center. Do you see that? It's going, where am I at? Wow, it's going to the right a little bit. So I just need to square that up. So I'm going to come in here like this, and I'm holding here on the loop, and I'm swinging that in a little bit more just to line it up with my ear hook so it's nice and centered. Now I need to line this all up, flatten this all up, because when we're doing all this shaping and hammering, it can kind of, cock our wire off a little bit. So we have this beautiful, beautiful ear hook now, and all we're going to do is simply attach our earring. And remember, y'all, you can I'm just sliding my jump ring through, and I hope I'm in the right direction. If I'm not, I'll just switch it around. I'm not, so I'm going to slide it out. I always get confused that way. Now, I'm going to push these two together so that they're closed off, and I'm just going to grab them and squeeze them together like that so it can't slide out. And now we have our beautiful earring. Isn't that adorable? I really hope you enjoyed that, everyone. Please, if you do one of my designs, I'd really appreciate if you tag me. Just say design credit, DDLynn Designs, and tag my Facebook page so that they can follow my tutorial. I'm really trying to build my page. But these are just adorable earrings, and you can make a matching pendant, and you can just go anywhere with them. You can do 3 hoops, you can do 4 hoops. I did one with 6. For the pendant. So you can just go anywhere with them. You can just do a little loop on the front if you want. It's really the sky's the limit, whatever you want to do. Thank you for being a part of this wonderful, magical community in the ancient art of wire. I do truly wish for you all that you wish for yourselves. And as Bambi said in Thumper, if you ain't got nothing nice to say, please don't say anything at all. Have a wonderful, magical wire art day. Bye for now.